Hey guys, tonight we begin with a curious little twist of history, one that might make you grateful for the modern luxury of not being accused of stealing a neighbour's pig on a whim. Imagine a world where a missing loaf of bread or a stray cow could turn you into the village's most wanted criminal, your fate decided by a crowd of suspicious neighbours wielding pitchforks and a startling lack of evidence. It's the Middle Ages, and suspicion is as common as muddy boots. The irony? In a time when everyone was struggling to survive, the real theft was often just time stolen by mistrust. So let's wander back to a foggy village in 13th century Europe, where whispers could ruin lives and justice was, let's say, creatively administered. If you enjoy this kind of thing, maybe like and subscribe, but only if you feel like it. No pressure. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan, and settle in. Let's drift into a world where suspicion was the loudest voice in the room and you're about to live through it. You wake up in medieval Europe, specifically a small village in England, around 1275. The air smells of damp straw and wood smoke, and your bed is a lumpy sack of straw that crunches when you shift. You're a villager, not a noble, not a peasant bound to the land, but a freeman, which sounds grand until you realise it just means you pay rent to the Lord instead of your soul. Your home is a single room, walls of wattle and daub, which is a fancy way of saying sticks and mud. The roof leaks when it rains, which is always, and your only window is a hole covered with a scrap of cloth. Cosy, in a hope you like damp sort of way. This morning something's off. You step outside and the village is buzzing, not with bees but with whispers. Your neighbour Agnes, a woman with a face like a disappointed turnip, is muttering to old Tom, the baker, who's nodding like he's solving a mystery. You catch fragments. Seen it last night, gone by dawn, probably her. Her? You? Your stomach does a slow flip. The baker's prize rooster, a bird so pompous it struts like a knight, is missing. And somehow, you're the prime suspect. Suspicion in the Middle Ages wasn't like today, where you might get a stern email from HR. Here, it's a spark in dry grass. One wrong word, and you're facing a trial by people who think evidence is just a loud opinion. You try to laugh it off. Surely no one thinks you'd steal a rooster. You're more of a borrow an egg type. But as you walk to the well, eyes follow you. The blacksmith, a man built like a barrel, squints as if you've personally insulted his hammer. Even the village children, usually too busy throwing rocks at each other, point and whisper. You're not just living under suspicion, you're drowning in it. You stand in the muddy lane of your 13th century English village, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke. It's noon, and the sun is a shy guest, peeking through clouds that seem to have a personal grudge against brightness. Your morning started with a jolt, not from the usual crow of old Tom's rooster, that feathered tyrant who treats 3 a.m. like it's prime time, but from the whispers slithering through the village like eels in a stream. The rooster, that pompous bird with a strut that could shame a knight, is missing. And somehow, you're the one everyone's pointing at. You, a freeman with a leaky roof and a barley plot that's more hope than harvest, are now the village's most notorious rooster thief. The irony is almost poetic. In a world where everyone's scraping by, a missing bird is the crime of the century. You're hauling a bucket of water from the well, the wooden yoke digging into your shoulders when the reeve approaches. He's the Lord's overseer, a man who wears his authority like a slightly cleaner tunic. His name's Godfrey, but you call him Sir Frowns-a-lot in your head because his face looks like it's been carved from a particularly grumpy oak. You, he says, pointing a finger that feels like it's accusing your entire family tree. There's talk you took old Tom's rooster. You blink, the bucket sloshing as you set it down. The rooster? The one that makes you dream of chicken stew every time it wakes you before dawn? You'd rather steal a moment of peace than that squawking nuisance. You try to laugh it off, a nervous chuckle that sounds like a sheep with hiccups. Me? Steal a rooster? I was asleep, Godfrey, probably dreaming of bread that doesn't taste like dirt. But Godfrey's not amused. His eyes narrow, and you realise that in this village, suspicion doesn't need evidence, it needs a target, and you're wearing the bullseye. He explains that old Tom, the baker with a beard like a bramble bush, swears he saw you lurking near his coop last night. Lurking. It's a word that sounds like it was invented to make innocent people sweat. You weren't lurking. You were snoring, tangled in your scratchy wool blanket. But try proving that when your only witness is a cat who spends her days plotting against sparrows. Godfrey crosses his arms, his tunic straining against his barrel chest. You'll face the manor court tomorrow, he says, as if he's announcing the weather. Old Tom's pressing the charge, and Agnes is backing him up. Agnes, the neighbour with a face like a disappointed turnip, has been whispering poison since sunrise. You can picture her now, leaning over her fence, telling anyone who'll listen that you're the kind of person who'd steal a rooster and probably dance with the devil on weekends. The manor court, Godfrey explains, isn't some grand affair with a king's justice in a fancy robe. It's a gathering of villagers, presided over by the Lord's steward, a man who cares more about the Lord's taxes than your innocence. The court's job is to keep the peace, not to find the truth, and you're starting to feel like peace might mean your head on a metaphorical spike. You nod, because what else can you do? Argue with Godfrey, and you'll only make it worse. He's already eyeing you like you've got feathers tucked in your tunic. As he strides off, his boots squelching in the mud, you feel the village's gaze settle on you like a damp fog. You pick up your bucket and trudge back to your hut, the water sloshing in time with your thoughts. The blacksmith, a man built like he could hammer iron with his bare hands, pauses his work to squint at you. His apprentice, a lanky boy with a face full of freckles, whispers something, and they both laugh. Even the village children, usually too busy throwing clods of dirt at each other, stop to point and giggle. Rooster thief, one of them mutters, and you resist the urge to point out that they're more likely to steal apples from the Lord's orchard than you are to touch that bird. Back in your hut, you set the bucket down and sit on your straw mattress, which crunches like it's mocking you. The walls, made of wattle and daub, sticks and mud, the medieval equivalent of optimism, seem to close in. You think about the rooster. It's not just a bird, it's a symbol. In a village where hunger is a constant guest, a rooster means eggs, and eggs mean survival. Stealing one is like stealing a week's worth of meals, a crime that stabs at the heart of a community that's already one bad harvest from starvation. You get it, in a grim sort of way. But you didn't do it, and the fact that no one believes you, or worse, no one cares, makes your chest tight. You try to go about your day, heading to your barley plot, a scraggly patch of dirt that's more weeds than grain. You pull at a thistle, its thorns pricking your fingers, and wonder if this is how it feels to be judged by a village that's decided your guilt before you've even spoken. The irony isn't lost on you. In a world where everyone's bending the rules, sneaking an extra handful of grain from the Lord's fields, borrowing firewood from a neighbour's stack, you're the one under suspicion for a crime you didn't commit. You think about old Tom, his flour-dusted hands and his insistence that you were lurking. Maybe he's just embarrassed his prize rooster wandered off. Maybe Agnes is stirring the pot because she's still mad you got a better plot of land last year. Or maybe they just need someone to blame, and you're convenient. As the day drags on, the clouds thicken, and a light rain starts to fall, turning the village into a slurry of mud and mistrust. You pass the alehouse, where a few men are nursing mugs of watery ale. One of them, a farmer named Hugh, with a face like a weathered plough, calls out, "Heard you fancy roosters now?" The others laugh, and you force a smile because snapping back would only make you look guiltier. You keep walking, the rain soaking your tunic, and think about the manor court. Tomorrow you'll stand before the steward and a crowd of your neighbours, people who've known you for years but now see you as a thief. The thought makes your stomach twist, not out of fear, though there's plenty of that, but out of the sheer absurdity of it all. A rooster of all things. You lie down that night, the straw poking your back like 1,000 tiny accusations. Outside, the rain patters on the roof, and you wonder how a single missing bird could turn your world upside down. Medieval justice, you're learning, is less about truth and more about who can shout the loudest. Old Tom's got the village's ear, and Agnes is fanning the flames. You close your eyes, trying to imagine a world where innocent until proven guilty isn't just a dream. But here, in 1275, suspicion is heavier than the Lord's taxes, and you're carrying its full weight. Tomorrow, you'll face the court, and all you can hope is that the truth, or at least a good story, might lighten the load. Morning breaks over your 13th century village, a grey smear of light filtering through clouds that seem to have settled in for a long stay. You wake on your straw mattress, the familiar crunch beneath you, a reminder that comfort is a distant dream. The air in your hut is damp, smelling of earth and the faint char of last night's fire. Today is no ordinary day. You're due at the manor court, where you'll answer for the alleged theft of Old Tom's rooster, a bird whose absence has turned you into the village's favourite villain. You pull on your tunic, still damp from yesterday's rain, and step outside, where the mud clings to your boots like a clingy rumour. The weight of suspicion follows you, heavier than the bucket you carried yesterday as you make your way to the Lord's Hall. The hall, grandly named but really just a draughty barn with ambitions, looms at the edge of the village. Its timbers are weathered, its thatched roof sagging like a tired old man. Inside it smells of damp wool, nervous sweat, and the faint tang of ale from someone's breakfast. The room is packed with villagers, some here for their own disputes, over a stray cow or a broken fence, others just for the spectacle. In the Middle Ages, the manor court is the closest thing to entertainment, like a play where the actors might lose more than their dignity. You stand near the front, heart thudding, as the steward takes his seat at the high table. He's a lean man with a nose like a hawk's beak and a ledger he clutches like it holds the secrets of the universe. His name's Ralph, but you think of him as Sir Board because his size suggests he'd rather be tallying the Lord's sheep than dealing with your drama. Old Tom steps forward, clutching his hat like it's a shield. His beard, a tangle of grey and flour, quivers as he launches into his tale. "I saw her," he says, pointing at you with the confidence of a man who's never doubted himself, lurking by my coop, under the moonlight, plain as day. Lurking again. The word is starting to feel like a personal curse. You want to laugh at the absurdity. Moonlight? In this cloudy village, where the moon's more rumour than reality? But the crowd leans in, eating up Tom's story like it's fresh-baked bread. He paints you as a shadowy figure, creeping through the night to steal his prize rooster, a bird he describes as if it were the king's own falcon. You catch Agnes in the crowd, her turnip-like face nodding, her eyes glinting with the satisfaction of a grudge well fed. You step forward when the steward calls your name, your voice steady but your palms slick. "I was asleep," you say, "not lurking. I've no use for a rooster that crows like it's auditioning for the apocalypse." A few villagers chuckle, but it's a nervous sound, quickly smothered by Agnes's glare. The steward rubs his temples, clearly wishing for a simpler case, like who trampled whose barley. He explains your options, each one sounding like a punishment for a crime you didn't commit. First, there's trial by compurgation, a fancy term for rounding up 12 people to swear you're not a thief. It's less about truth and more about popularity, and you're not exactly the village's favourite right now. Half the crowd believes Agnes's whispers, and the other half just doesn't care enough to vouch for you. You think of the miller, still sore about those trampled turnips, and the baker's apprentice, who smirked at you yesterday. Finding 12 oath helpers feels like convincing the clouds to stop raining. The alternative is trial by ordeal, which the steward mentions with the casual air of someone suggesting a nap. You could plunge your hand into a cauldron of boiling water to grab a stone, and if your burns heal cleanly within 3 days, you're innocent. Or you could carry a red-hot iron across the room, hoping your blisters don't look too guilty. The logic is so absurd it's almost funny. Almost. You imagine explaining to your future self, if you survive, that your fate depended on whether your skin could charm a scalding pot. The crowd murmurs, some excited by the prospect of a spectacle, others just eager to get back to their fields. You picture the boiling water, the hissing iron, and wonder if medieval justice is just a game where everyone loses. The steward, yawning, offers a third option. Pay a fine and settle the matter. But you're a freeman, not a lord, and your purse holds more dreams than coins. A fine would mean giving up your barley harvest, maybe even your cow, leaving you to starve through winter. You ask for time to find oath helpers, clinging to the hope that you can scrape together enough goodwill to avoid the cauldron. The steward, eager to move on to a dispute about a broken plough, grants you a week. But don't dawdle, he says, as if you're planning a holiday. You nod, the crowd's eyes boring into you, and leave the hall. The air outside feels no lighter, the mud no less clingy. You're free for now, but suspicion is a shadow that doesn't fade. As you walk back to your hut, the village feels smaller, its thatched roofs and smoky chimneys closing in like a jury. You pass the blacksmith, hammering away, his eyes flicking up to judge you. The alewife, usually quick with a smile, pretends to be busy with her barrels. Even the village children, chasing a stray dog, pause to whisper, "Rooster thief," as you pass. You want to shout that you didn't do it, that old Tom's probably just embarrassed his bird wandered off to woo a hen in the next village. But shouting won't help. Here, truth is as slippery as the muddy path under your feet. You think about the court, its peculiar justice rooted in whispers and rituals rather than reason. The irony stings. In a world where survival demands cunning, sneaking an extra sheaf of wheat, borrowing a neighbour's firewood, you're the one facing judgment for a crime that's more story than fact. Back in your hut, you sit on your straw bed, the familiar crunch now a mocking sound. The walls, patched with mud and hope, offer no comfort. You think about the week ahead, the daunting task of finding 12 people to swear you're no thief. You picture young Will, who might help because you fixed his fence, and maybe the alewife who likes your face. But 9 more? That's a mountain to climb in a village where suspicion grows faster than barley. You lie back, the straw poking your ribs, and let the world fade. The rain starts again, a soft patter on the roof, and you wonder if justice is just another word for surviving the crowd's gaze. Tomorrow you'll start knocking on doors, hoping to find voices louder than Agnes's whispers. The dawn creeps into your 13th century village like a guest unsure of its welcome, painting the sky in muted greys. You rise from your straw mattress, the familiar crunch under your weight, a reminder of the world you're stuck in. Mud, mistrust, and a missing rooster that's turned you into the village pariah. Your hut, with its wattle and daub walls and perpetually leaky roof, feels smaller today, as if the suspicion clinging to you has shrunk the very air. You pull on your worn tunic, still damp from yesterday's drizzle, and step outside. The village is waking, smoke curling from chimneys, but the eyes that meet yours are sharp, like thorns hidden in the morning mist. You have 1 week to find 12 oath helpers to swear you didn't steal old Tom's rooster, a task that feels like convincing the rain to fall upward. You start with Widow Margaret, who lives at the edge of the village in a hut that leans like it's tired of standing. She's kind, with a smile that crinkles her face like old parchment, but she's half deaf and squints at you as you explain your plight. Rooster? You want my goat? She asks, patting your hand as if you're the one confused. You try again, shouting about the manor court and your need for her to swear you're no thief. She nods, but you're not sure if she's agreeing or just humouring you. As you leave, she offers you a cup of watery ale, which you decline, partly because it's barely dawn, partly because you're not sure she'd remember you didn't steal it. One potential ally, maybe, but it's a shaky start. Next, you head to the miller's, a man named John whose grudge against you is as stubborn as the stones he grinds. Last year, you accidentally stepped on his turnips during a harvest festival, a crime he's treated like high treason ever since. His mill, powered by a sluggish stream, groans as you approach, and he greets you with a scowl that could curdle milk. "Heard you're a rooster thief now," he says, wiping floury hands on his apron. You explain you didn't do it, that old Tom's bird probably just wandered off, but John snorts. "Wandered off? Like my turnips wandered under your boot?" You bite back a retort. Arguing with a man who holds grudges like holy relics won't help. You leave, his laughter trailing you like a bad smell, and cross him off your mental list. The village is alive now, its rhythm unbroken by your troubles. The blacksmith hammers away, sparks flying like tiny accusations. The alewife stirs a vat outside her hut, her chatter with a customer pausing as you pass. Even the children, chasing a piglet through the mud, stop to whisper, "Thief," as you trudge by. Suspicion, you're learning, is a living thing here, fed by boredom and old grudges. Agnes, with her turnip face and knack for gossip, has been busy. You catch her by the well, muttering to a gaggle of women about your shifty eyes. You want to point out that her own eyes are shifty, especially when she's eyeing your barley plot, but you hold your tongue. In 1275, words are weapons, and yours need to be sheathed. You try the priest next, Father Edmund, a man whose sermons are as long as winter and twice as gloomy. He's in the churchyard, tending a patch of herbs, his robe hitched up to reveal bony knees. You explain your case, hoping his talk of charity extends to you. He listens, stroking his beard, then murmurs about the appearance of sin. You're not sure if he means the rooster or your existence, but his hesitation stings. "I'll pray on it," he says, which is as good as a no. You leave the churchyard, the weight of suspicion heavier than the bell above you. The irony isn't lost on you. In a village where everyone's bending the rules, sneaking extra grain, skimming a bit of the Lord's firewood, you're the one on trial for a crime that's more rumour than reality. By afternoon, you've secured 3 oath helpers, a small victory that feels like hauling water uphill. There's young Will, a lanky lad who owes you for helping him mend his fence last spring. He agrees with a grin, saying, "You're no thief, too clumsy to sneak." The alewife, bless her, signs on because she likes your face and thinks Agnes is a sour old cow. And surprisingly, the blacksmith, a man built like a barrel, grunts that he doesn't think you'd bother with a rooster when you could just buy eggs. "Too much hassle for a bird that loud," he says, and you almost hug him. 3 down, 9 to go, and the week slipping away like water through your fingers. You sit by your barley plot as the sun dips, the stalks drooping like they're as tired as you. The village hums around you, its sounds, clanging hammers, shouting children, the creak of a cart, now a chorus of judgment. You think about Agnes, whose grudge stems from the Lord giving you a better plot last year, a decision she's spun into a tale of your scheming. Old Tom, you suspect, just wants someone to blame so he can claim compensation from the Lord. The rooster's probably off strutting in the next village, oblivious to the storm it's caused. Suspicion, you realise, isn't about truth. It's about who can spin the better story. And right now, Agnes and Tom are winning. Night falls, and you lie on your straw bed, the roof leaking a steady drip into a bucket. The village's eyes and ears are everywhere, even in the dark, and you feel them watching. You think of the manor court, the steward's bored sighs, the crowd's eager whispers. 3 oath helpers are a start, but 9 more feels like a dream. You close your eyes, the rain's soft patter a faint comfort, and wonder if you'll wake to a village that's forgotten your name, or one that's carved it into a tale of guilt. In the Middle Ages, suspicion is a thief that steals trust, time, and peace, and you're learning just how much it can take. The week has slipped through your fingers like water from the village well. And now the morning of the manor court dawns over your 13th century English village. You wake on your straw mattress, the familiar crunch beneath you, a grim reminder of the world you're tethered to. Mud, mistrust, and a missing rooster that's painted you as a thief. Your hut, with its wattle and daub walls and a roof that leaks like it's holding a grudge, feels like a cage today. You pull on your tunic, damp as always, and step into the grey light. The air smells of wet earth and wood smoke, but there's a tension in it, as if the village itself is holding its breath. Today, you'll face the steward and the crowd, armed with only 8 oath helpers to swear you didn't steal old Tom's rooster. 8, not 12, and the gap feels like a chasm. You trudge toward the Lord's Hall, boots squelching in the mud, the weight of suspicion heavier than the clouds overhead. The village is awake, its rhythm unbroken by your troubles. Children chase a stray dog. The blacksmith's hammer rings. The alewife's laughter spills from her hut. But their eyes follow you, sharp and unyielding, like crows waiting for a scrap. Agnes, with her turnip face and venomous tongue, stands by the well, whispering to a cluster of women. You catch rooster thief, and your name in the same breath, and your stomach twists. You've spent the week knocking on doors, pleading your case, and while young Will, the alewife, and the blacksmith have pledged to stand with you, 9 others remain elusive. The miller still holds his turnip grudge, Widow Margaret thinks you're after her goat, and Father Edmund's prayers haven't translated into support. 8 is all you have, and it's not enough. The hall is as draughty as you remember, its timbers groaning under the weight of too many winters. The crowd packs in, their murmurs a low hum, like bees before a storm. The steward Ralph sits at the high table, his hawk-like nose buried in his ledger, looking as bored as ever. Old Tom steps forward, hat in hand, ready to repeat his tale of your lurking by his coop. But before he can start, a commotion stirs outside. A shout, then laughter, rippling through the crowd like a breeze. A boy bursts in, all freckles and excitement, yelling, "The rooster's back!" The room erupts in whispers, and even Ralph raises an eyebrow, which for him is a full-blown tantrum. Old Tom's face reddens, his beard quivering as he stammers, "Well, that don't change nothing." But it changes everything. You learn the rooster strutted into Old Tom's yard at dawn, looking smug and slightly fatter, as if it's been on a grand tour of the next village. The crowd laughs, some pointing at Tom, others at Agnes, whose scowl could curdle the air. You feel a flicker of relief, like a knot loosening in your chest, but you're not free yet. The steward clears his throat, silencing the room, and calls you forward. Your 8 oath helpers stand with you. Young Will, grinning like he's won a bet. The alewife, winking as if this is all a grand joke. The blacksmith, arms crossed like he's daring anyone to argue. And 5 others you've scraped together, neighbours who've decided you're not worth the drama. It's not 12, but it's a crowd, and in this moment, it feels like enough. Ralph sighs, flipping a page in his ledger. The rooster's returned, he says, voice flat as a millstone. But the charge was made, so let's hear it. Old Tom mumbles his story again, but it's weaker now, deflated by the bird's inconvenient return. He claims you still might have disturbed his coop, but the crowd's not buying it. They're too busy chuckling about the rooster's adventure. Agnes tries to pipe up, muttering about your shifty ways, but even her allies are losing interest. Your oath helpers step forward, one by one, swearing you're no thief. Young Will says you're too honest to steal, the alewife calls you a good sort, and the blacksmith grunts that no one would bother with Tom's noisy bird. The others echo similar sentiments, their voices a quiet chorus against the storm of suspicion. The steward listens, scratching his quill across parchment, then looks up. 8 oaths and a rooster that's clearly been on holiday, he says, a rare hint of dry humour in his tone. I've a plough dispute to settle, so let's end this. He declares the matter closed. No fine, no boiling water, no hot irons. The crowd murmurs, some disappointed by the lack of drama, others already distracted by the next case. You stand there, the weight lifting, not entirely but enough to let you breathe. Old Tom shuffles off, muttering about, maybe I was wrong, while Agnes storms out, her grudge now aimed at the rooster itself. The village will keep whispering for weeks, you know. Suspicion doesn't die, it just naps. But for now, you're free. You walk home, the sun breaking through the clouds, a rare gift in this soggy corner of England. The mud still clings to your boots, but it feels lighter, as if the earth itself has eased its grip. You pass your barley plot, the stalks swaying in a breeze that carries the scent of rain and redemption. The irony isn't lost on you. In a world where everyone's stealing moments to survive, extra grain here, a bit of firewood there, a wayward rooster nearly undid you, but it also saved you, its return a quiet twist of fate that turned whispers into laughter. You think of your oath helpers, those 8 voices who stood against the tide, and feel a flicker of warmth. Trust, you've learned, is fragile but stubborn, like a weed pushing through mud. Back in your hut, you lie on your straw bed, the familiar crunch now a comfort rather than a taunt. The roof leaks, the bucket catching its steady drip, but the sound is soothing, a reminder that some things endure. The village's eyes and ears will watch you still, waiting for a misstep, but today you've slipped through their grasp. You close your eyes, the world fading to the hum of rain and the distant crow of a rooster that's probably gloating. In the Middle Ages, suspicion was a thief that stole trust and time, but sometimes, just sometimes, a wandering bird could steal it back. And so, you drift back to your own time, the village fading like a dream. The Middle Ages were a world of mud and mistrust, where a missing rooster could turn you into a villain, and justice was as slippery as a rainy path. But there's something oddly comforting in knowing that even then, people muddled through, finding ways to laugh, love, and let go. So close your eyes, let the fan hum, and rest easy. You're not on trial tonight. Let's jump into another story, a story so unassuming you might wonder why it's worth telling at all. Picture this. While knights clashed and kings schemed, there was a figure in the shadows, spade in hand, doing the work no one else wanted. The medieval gravedigger, unsung, unnoticed, yet indispensable. Isn't it ironic? The one who buried the mighty was often forgotten himself. Let's wander into his world, shall we? If you enjoy this kind of thing, maybe like and subscribe, but only if you feel like it. Dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan, and let's slip into the quiet rhythm of a gravedigger's life. You wake up in medieval Europe, in a village so small it barely earns a name. It's 1347, and the air smells of damp earth and wood smoke. Your cottage is little more than a lean-to, with a straw mattress and a single stool. You're the gravedigger, and your day begins before the sun dares to show its face. Outside the world is still, save for the faint cluck of chickens and the distant bark of a dog. You pull on your rough woolen tunic, the one with the faint smell of clay that never quite washes out, and grab your spade. It's not much, but it's yours, polished by years of your grip, the handle worn smooth as a river stone. The village is waking slowly, but you're already trudging toward the churchyard. The path is familiar, each rut and stone known to your feet. You pass the baker's hut, where the first loaves are just beginning to scent the air, and you nod to no one in particular. Nobody seeks you out for conversation, and that's fine. You're not here to make friends with the living. Your work is with those who've already said their goodbyes. The churchyard sits at the edge of the village, a patch of uneven ground surrounded by a low stone wall. Yew trees loom overhead, their branches heavy with the weight of centuries. You pause at the gate, not out of reverence, but because you always do. It's a habit, like checking the sky for rain. The graveyard is your domain, a map of your labour etched in mounds and crosses. You know every grave, every name, every story half told by the epitaphs. Some call it morbid, but to you, it's just home. You start digging before the first light breaks. The soil is stubborn today, laced with roots and pebbles, but you've fought worse. Each strike of the spade is rhythmic, almost meditative. Scrape, lift, toss. Scrape, lift, toss. The world fades to the sound of your work. You don't think about the body you're preparing for, just the measurements. 6 feet deep, 2 feet wide, long enough for a man or woman to lie without complaint. You're not one for sentiment, but there's a strange poetry in making a bed that lasts forever. By mid-morning, the village hums with life, though you barely notice. The blacksmith's hammer rings in the distance, a steady clang that marks the hours like a heartbeat. Women chatter at the well, their voices rising and falling like a gentle tide, while a merchant's shout over a basket of turnips cuts through the air, sharp and fleeting. But here, in the churchyard, it's just you, your spade, and the earth. You're halfway through today's grave, and your shoulders carry the familiar ache of your trade. A dull, persistent throb that feels like an old friend who never leaves. The dirt piles neatly to one side, each shovelful placed with care. A sloppy gravedigger is no better than a butcher with a dull knife, and you take quiet pride in your precision, even if no one else notices. You pause to catch your breath, leaning on your spade, its handle worn smooth as a river stone from years of your grip. Your gaze drifts to the oldest corner of the churchyard, where a grave sits, its stone so weathered the name is barely a whisper of itself. You dug that one when you were still a boy, apprenticed to old Wulfric, whose hands were gnarled as the yew trees looming overhead. He'd grunt with every shovelful, muttering lessons you didn't fully grasp then. The dead don't care how pretty the hole is, he'd say, his voice rough as the gravel underfoot, but the living do. It was his way of teaching you to keep things tidy, to give the mourners something to hold on to when words failed them. Back then you thought it was just about the dirt. Now you understand it's about giving order to a world that's always teetering on the edge of chaos. There's an irony in your work that you can't help but notice, though you'd never speak it aloud. You're the one they call when life ends, the one who carves out a space for eternity. Yet when you walk through the village, eyes slide past you like you're no more than a wisp of fog. You're not bitter about it. Gravediggers don't expect ballads or banquets. But it's strange, isn't it? The priest speaks of heaven. The family weeps their goodbyes. But it's your hands that make the final act possible. You're the one who ensures the dead rest properly, yet you're as invisible as the wind rustling the yew branches above, Sometimes you wonder if the earth itself is your only witness, the only one that sees the care you take. Today's grave is for Edric, a farmer who laughed too loudly at the alehouse, his voice booming over mugs of warm, sour beer. Fever took him, quick and unkind, and now you're shaping his final bed. You don't know him well. Gravediggers rarely know the dead beyond their names, but you've seen him in passing, his broad shoulders hauling sacks of grain, his grin wide enough to shame the sun. Now he's silent, and you're measuring the earth to fit him. 6 feet deep, you remind yourself, though sometimes you wonder why it's always 6. 5 might do for most, but tradition is a stubborn thing, and you're not one to argue with it. You drive the spade into the soil again, and the rhythm takes over. Scrape, lift, toss. Each movement is a small defiance against the chaos of the world, a way to impose order where there's none. The earth resists, as it always does, with roots that tangle like stubborn thoughts and rocks that jar your wrists with every strike. But you've fought this battle before, and you know how to coax the ground into yielding. There's a quiet satisfaction in that, a sense of control you suspect others might envy if they ever stop to think about it. But they don't. To them you're just the man with the spade, the shadow at the edge of their grief. You don't mind, not really. There's a kind of freedom in being unseen. It lets you watch the world without being tangled in its dramas. You see the widow who lingers too long at her husband's grave, the boy who sneaks flowers onto his sister's mound, the priest who mutters prayers like they're a shield against his own doubts. You see it all, and you keep digging. You think about Wulfric again, his words echoing in your mind like a half-forgotten song. He was a gruff teacher, but he had his own kind of wisdom. Every grave's a story, he'd say, wiping sweat from his brow with a rag that smelled of earth and time. You're not just digging holes, lad. You're keeping their endings. You didn't understand it then, too young to see beyond the sweat and the dirt. But now, with years of graves behind you, you get it. Each mound is a chapter closed, a life tucked into the earth's embrace. You've buried children who never saw their 10th summer, old women who outlived their kin, and once, a knight whose rusted sword was buried with him, more show than substance. Each grave is different, yet they're all the same in the end. Just earth, just silence. The sun climbs higher, and you're nearly done with Edric's grave. You step back to check your work, wiping your hands on your tunic. The hole is clean, its edges straight, the depth just right. You imagine Edric lying here tomorrow, his laughter stilled, his body wrapped in a simple shroud. You wonder briefly if anyone will dig your grave with the same care. Then you shake your head, a faint smile tugging at your lips. Such thoughts are for poets, not men like you. Your job is to dig, not to dream. You pick up your spade and smooth the dirt pile one last time, because Wulfric was right. The living needs something to hold on to, even if it's just the sight of a tidy grave. You hear footsteps, soft and hesitant, and you glance up to see a figure at the churchyard gate. It's not the priest this time, but a woman, her face hidden by a hood. She doesn't approach, just stands there, watching. You nod, a small acknowledgement, but she doesn't move. Maybe she's here for Edric, or maybe for someone else you've already buried. You don't ask. Questions aren't your business. You turn back to the grave, giving her the silence she needs. That's another thing Wulfric taught you. Sometimes the best thing you can offer is nothing at all. The village noise fades as you work, the world shrinking to the scrape of your spade and the soft thud of earth. You're not a philosopher, not a priest, not a hero. You're just the gravedigger, the one who makes room for the end. And in this quiet corner of the world, under the yew tree's watchful branches, that's enough. It's afternoon now, and the sun hangs high, though its warmth barely reaches you. A chill lingers in the air, a quiet warning that winter is creeping closer. You're nearly done with Edric's grave, the earth piled neatly beside it, your spade resting for a moment as you catch your breath. The churchyard is still, save for the rustle of yew branches overhead, their shadows stretching long across the uneven ground. The village hums beyond the low stone wall, children shouting, a cartwheel creaking, the distant low of a cow. But here, in your domain, the world feels hushed, as if holding its breath. You wipe sweat from your brow, the familiar ache in your shoulders a steady companion, and you survey your work. The grave is deep, clean, ready. Edric will rest well here, if such things matter. You hear footsteps, soft and hurried, crunching on the gravel path. It's Father Alfric, the priest, his robes flapping like a crow's wings as he approaches. His face is pale, his eyes wide with something you recognize as fear, though he tries to mask it with a tight smile. He's always been a nervous sort, wringing his hands like he's trying to squeeze answers out of them, but today he looks worse than usual. His voice when he speaks is low, as if he's afraid the wind might carry his words too far. "You've heard, haven't you?" he says, not really asking. "The sickness. It's in the next village. They say it's unlike anything before." You nod, not because you've heard much, but because you've seen enough. Travellers passing through the village, their faces drawn and their voices hushed, have whispered of towns gone silent, of bodies piled in streets because there weren't enough hands to bury them. You've caught fragments of their tales at the alehouse, where men speak in low tones over their mugs, their eyes darting as if death might be listening. You don't share this with Father Alfric. He's already half panicked, his fingers twisting the hem of his robe, and you've got no patience for hysterics. Instead, you lean on your spade, the wood cool against your palm, and ask, "Need another grave?" He flinches, as if your words were a stone thrown at him. "Not yet," he says too quickly, his voice catching. "But soon, perhaps." He looks away, toward the village, where life goes on as if nothing is wrong. You follow his gaze, noting the smoke curling from chimneys, the flicker of movement as a woman carries a basket toward the market. It's all so ordinary, yet you feel the weight of his words. Soon, you've dug enough graves to know what that means. One becomes 2, then 10, then more than you can count. You don't press him for details. People like to dance around death, as if naming it makes it real. But you know better. Death is real whether you name it or not. You turn back to the grave, smoothing the edges with a final pass of your spade. The soil is stubborn today, laced with pebbles that clink against the metal, but you've wrestled with worse. You focus on the rhythm, scrape, lift, toss, letting it anchor you against the priest's unease. Father Alfric lingers, muttering prayers under his breath, his words a soft drone like bees in a meadow. You don't listen closely. Prayers are his business, just as dirt is yours. But you catch the tremor in his voice, the way it falters on words meant to comfort. He's afraid, and you can't blame him. You've heard the whispers too. The Black Death, they call it, though you're not sure why. Maybe it's the boils, black as sin, or maybe it's the way it darkens everything it touches, leaving villages as quiet as the graves you dig. You step back, satisfied with the grave's clean lines, and wipe your hands on your tunic. It's a good hole, deep and precise, the kind Wulfric would have approved of. You think of him again, the old gravedigger who taught you the trade, his gruff voice echoing in your memory. "Dig like it's your own," he'd say, meaning to put care into every shovelful, even if no one else sees it. You've followed that advice all these years, though you're not sure why. The dead don't thank you, and the living rarely notice. But there's a strange comfort in doing it right, in giving the earth what it's due. You glance at Father Alfric, who's still hovering, his eyes fixed on the grave, as if it holds answers he can't find in his scriptures. "It'll be ready for tomorrow," you say, more to fill the silence than to reassure him. He nods, but his gaze drifts to the horizon, where the road stretches toward the next village. "They say it moves fast," he murmurs, almost to himself. "Faster than a man can run." You don't respond. You've heard the same, and you know what it means for you. More graves, more days of digging until your hands blister and your back bends. You wonder briefly how many you'll dig before it's done. 12? 100? The thought sits heavy in your chest, but you push it away, one grave at a time. That's the only way to do it. You've learned that much from years of turning earth. Father Alfric shuffles away, his robes trailing dust, and you're alone again with the yew trees and the graves. You pick up your spade and start the final touches, levelling the dirt pile with a practiced hand. The churchyard feels smaller today, as if the shadows are creeping closer. You've always known death, lived with it as close as your own shadow, but this feels different. The Black Death isn't just a fever or a bad harvest, it's something bigger, something that could swallow whole villages and leave nothing but your work behind. You don't fear it, not exactly. Fear is for those with something to lose, and your life is simple: spade, earth, sky. But you feel the weight of it, like a stone in your pocket, heavy but not yet crushing. You finish the grave and stand back, the spade resting by your side. The sun is lower now, its light slanting through the yews, casting long fingers across the ground. You think of the other graves you've dug, too many to count, each one a story you'll never fully know. There was the widow who outlived her children, her stone carved with a single word, beloved. There was the boy who fell from a tree, his grave so small it felt like a betrayal. Each one left a mark on you, though you'd never admit it. You're not a sentimental man, but you carry them all in the calluses on your hands and the quiet of your evenings. You wonder what Edric's story will be, and how many more will join him before the sickness passes. The wind picks up, carrying the faint scent of rain, and you turn toward home, the churchyard falling silent behind you. The sun dips low now, painting the sky in soft hues of amber and grey, like a candle burning down to its last flicker. You're back at your cottage, a humble lean-to at the edge of the village, washing the day's dirt from your hands in a bucket of cold water. The earth clings stubbornly to your skin, embedding itself in the creases of your palms, a reminder of the grave you finished for Edric. Your shoulders ache, your back protests with every movement, but these are familiar pains, as much a part of you as the spade leaning against the wall. The village is quieter than it should be, as if it's holding its breath, and you feel it too, a stillness that settles deeper than the evening chill. You sit on your lone stool, eating a simple supper of coarse bread and a wedge of hard cheese, the kind that tastes more of time than flavour. The fire in the hearth is little more than glowing embers, casting a faint warmth that barely reaches your bones. Outside, the evening bell tolls from the church, its deep, resonant clang rolling over the village like a slow tide. It's a sound you've known all your life, steady as your own heartbeat, marking the end of the day's labour. But tonight, it carries a heavier note, as if it's ringing for something beyond Vespers, something the village isn't ready to name. You chew slowly, listening, letting the sound fill the small space of your cottage. Your thoughts drift to the graves you've dug over the years, each one a marker of your quiet work. There was the old widow, Marjorie, who outlived 3 husbands and half her village, her stone carved with a rose, because she loved her garden more than anything. You remember the weight of the dirt as you covered her, the way her daughter stood silent at the edge of the grave, clutching a sprig of lavender. There was the child, little Elfric, who drowned in the river one summer, his grave so small it felt like a wound in the earth. You dug that one with a tightness in your chest you couldn't name, though you'd never admit it to anyone. And there was the knight, Sir Godric, buried with his rusted sword, a relic more for show than battle. Each grave is a story, and you're the one who keeps them, though no one asks you to remember. You wonder, as you break off another piece of bread, what your own story will be. No one will carve a stone for you, you're certain of that. Gravediggers don't get monuments, not in villages like this. Your name won't be whispered in prayers or etched in stone, and that's all right. You've spent your life giving others their final place. Widows, children, knights and farmers like Edric. Maybe that's enough. The thought doesn't trouble you, but it lingers, like the faint smell of earth that never leaves your clothes. You've never been one for grand dreams or lofty hopes. Your world is simple: the spade, the soil, the silence. Yet as the bell's echo fades, you feel a quiet pride in the work you do, even if it's only the yew trees that bear witness. You finish your meal and step outside, the air cool against your face. The stars are just beginning to prick the sky, indifferent and distant, but there's a comfort in their constancy. They don't judge, don't gossip, don't care about your trade or your solitude. You find yourself walking back to the churchyard, not because you have to, but because something pulls you there. The path is familiar, each stone and rut known to your feet, and the village is dark now, save for the faint glow of candles in a few windows. The churchyard gate creaks as you push it open, and you step into the quiet of your domain. The yew trees stand sentinel, their branches whispering in the breeze, and the graves stretch out before you, a map of your labour. Edric's grave waits, empty for now, its edges sharp and clean. Tomorrow they'll lay him in it, wrap him in a simple shroud, and you'll cover him with earth, layer by layer, until he's part of the ground itself. You don't know why you've come here tonight. Maybe to check your work, maybe to feel the stillness. The grave is perfect, just as Wulfric taught you. Dig like it's your own, he'd say, his voice rough but kind, and you've carried that lesson through every hole you've made. You run your hand along the spade's handle, its wood worn smooth by years of use, and you think of the days ahead. The Black Death is coming, its shadow already creeping through the whispers of travellers, and the fear in Father Alfric's eyes. You know what that means. More graves, more names, more stories you'll carry in silence. You stand there, under the yews, and the wind carries the faint scent of rain. The village sleeps, unaware of the weight you feel, the knowledge that your work will soon multiply. You don't fear it, not really. Death has been your companion too long for that. But you feel its presence, like a guest who hasn't yet knocked but stands just outside the door. You think of the graves yet to come, the ones you'll dig until your hands blister and your back bends. Each one will be as careful as Edric's, because that's who you are, the man who makes room for the end, who gives order to the chaos of loss. The stars watch, and the earth waits. You turn back toward your cottage, the spade still in your hand, its weight a comfort. Tomorrow will come, and with it another grave. But for now, the churchyard is quiet, and you're just another shadow among shadows, doing the work no one else will. The bell's echo lingers in your mind, a reminder that time moves on, and so must you. You walk home, the night wrapping around you like a cloak, and the world feels for a moment as still as the graves you keep. It's late now, and the village has slipped into a deep, uneasy sleep. You're back in your cottage, lying on your straw mattress, the embers in the hearth casting a faint, flickering glow across the rough walls. The air is cool, carrying the scent of damp earth and the promise of rain. You pull the thin woolen blanket over your shoulders, its weight familiar, but never quite warm enough. The world outside is silent, save for the occasional hoot of an owl or the rustle of leaves in the wind. Your spade rests by the door, its handle worn smooth from years of your grip, a quiet sentinel waiting for tomorrow's work. You close your eyes and the world shrinks to the slow rhythm of your breathing, steady as the tolling of the evening bell. Your thoughts drift to the churchyard, to the rows of graves you've dug over the years, each one a marker of your silent labour. There was the old tanner, his hands stained from a lifetime of hides, buried beneath a stone so plain it might have been an afterthought. You remember the widow who came every day for a month, leaving a single daisy on his grave until the frost took the flowers away. There was the girl, barely 5, taken by a cough that wouldn't relent, her grave so small you dug it with a heaviness you couldn't shake. And the merchant, his coffin heavy with coin he'd never spend, buried with a pomp that felt hollow even to you. Each grave is a story, etched in earth and stone, and you're the one who keeps them, though no one asks you to carry their weight. You think of Edric, the farmer whose grave you finished today, his laughter now just a memory in the alehouse. Tomorrow they'll lay him in the earth, and you'll cover him, layer by layer, until he's one with the ground. You wonder what they'll say about him, if they'll remember his broad grin, or the way he'd share his last crust of bread with a stranger. You don't know him well. Gravediggers rarely do, but you've seen enough of life to know that every ending leaves a ripple, a quiet absence that lingers in the village like a shadow. Your job is to make room for that absence, to give it a place to rest. It's a strange calling, but it's yours, and there's a quiet dignity in it, even if no one else sees it. The Black Death looms in your thoughts, its name heavy on the tongues of travellers and in the frightened whispers of the village. You've heard the stories, towns emptied, fields left fallow, bodies left unburied because there were no hands left to dig. Father Alfric's fear lingers in your mind, his wide eyes and trembling hands a warning of what's coming. You don't fear it, not exactly. Fear is for those with something to lose, and your life is simple, spade, earth, sky. But you feel the weight of it, like a stone in your chest, heavy but not yet crushing. You know what it means for you. More graves, more days of digging until your hands blister and your back bends. You wonder how many you'll dig before it's done. 12, 100, more? The thought is too big, so you let it slip away, focusing instead on the next grave, the next day. You think of old Wulfric, your mentor, his gruff voice still clear in your memory. "One hole at a time, lad," he'd say, his eyes squinting against the sun as he leaned on his spade. "Don't borrow tomorrow's dirt." It was his way of keeping you grounded, of teaching you to face the work without letting it swallow you. You've lived by that wisdom, taking each grave as it comes, each shovelful a small act of defiance against the chaos of the world. But tonight, with the Black Death's shadow creeping closer, you wonder if even Wulfric's words will be enough. You imagine the churchyard years from now, filled with your work, the mounds fading into the earth, the stones crumbling under time's patient hand. Will anyone remember the care you took, the way you made each grave as perfect as the last? You doubt it, but the thought doesn't trouble you. Your legacy isn't in stones or stories. It's in the earth itself, in the 1,000 beds you've made for those who've gone before. You shift on the mattress, the straw rustling beneath you, and you think of your own end. No one will dig for you with the same care, you're sure of that. Gravediggers don't get tidy graves or carved stones, but maybe that's all right. You've spent your life giving others their final place, shaping the earth to hold them gently. Maybe that's enough. There's a strange equality in your work, a truth you've learned over years of digging. Life is loud, full of laughter and tears and quarrels, but death is quiet, and you're the one who keeps that quiet. Kings and beggars, knights and farmers, they all end the same, under the same earth, in graves you've made with the same care. The embers in the hearth fade to a dull glow, and you feel sleep tugging at you. soft and insistent. The village dreams, the stars watch, and the churchyard waits, its silence a mirror of your own. You imagine tomorrow, the weight of the spade in your hands, the rhythm of scrape, lift, toss. You'll dig again, as you always do, because that's your place in the world. The Black Death may come, with its shadow and its hunger, but you'll meet it one grave at a time, just as Wulfric taught you. A faint smile crosses your lips, dry as the dust on your hands. It's enough, you think. It has to be. You drift towards sleep, the cottage settling around you, the world outside fading to a whisper. The spade by the door stands ready, the earth waits and you rest, knowing you'll rise with the dawn to do the work no one else will. The night is long, but it's yours, and in its quiet you find a kind of peace. Good night. Tonight we begin with a soft step into a world where time moves like honey, slow and deliberate, where the air hums with the scratch of quills, the faint toll of a bell, and the earthy scent of herbs tended by calloused hands. It's the year 1086, and you're not wielding a sword in some muddy battlefield or haggling over turnips in a noisy market. No, you're about to live a day in a medieval monastery, a place where silence is a language, and the most thrilling event might be a goat nibbling the wrong patch of lavender. Isn't it oddly charming, almost absurd, that in an age of clashing knights and scheming kings, some chose a life so orderly it makes your daily to-do list look like a drunken scribble? If this kind of story feels like a warm blanket for your mind, maybe like and subscribe, but only if you're inclined. No hurry. Now, dim the lights, perhaps turn on a fan for that gentle hum, and nestle into a cozy corner. You're about to slip into the worn sandals of a monk, living a life of quiet purpose within stone walls that have stood for centuries. Let's begin, slowly, as the monastery stirs from its slumber. You wake in a small Benedictine monastery, tucked into the rolling hills of Northumbria, where the wind carries whispers of salt from a distant sea. It's not a place of grandeur, no tapestries or silver goblets, just sturdy stone walls and the faint glow of a world not yet awake. Your bed is a straw mattress, thin and crackly, tucked in a dormitory that smells of wool, damp stone, and the lingering ghost of last night's barley soup. The air is chilly, even in late spring, and you pull your coarse woolen habit tighter, wishing for a moment that someone had thought to invent a proper blanket, or at least a thicker one. It's 3 a.m., or close enough. A bell tolls, its low, mournful clang slicing through the fog of sleep. This is Matins, the first of 7 daily prayer services, because apparently God keeps a schedule tighter than a tax collector's ledger. You rise, your bare feet meeting the cold stone floor, each step a small shock that jolts you awake. You shuffle through a dark corridor with the other monks, guided by a single candle's flicker. The flame dances, casting shadows that twist like silent spirits, and you wonder, half dozing, if it's trying to tell you something profound. Probably not. It's just a candle, and you're just tired. In the chapel, you join your brothers in a semicircle, your breath visible in the chill. The psalms begin, chanted in Latin, a language you've memorized through years of repetition, though you're no scholar. Your voice blends with the others, a low rhythmic hum that feels like it could hold the world together. The words are ancient, penned by a king who never imagined his poetry would echo in a drafty chapel centuries later. You try to focus, but your mind wanders to a mouse you saw last week, darting across the altar like it was late for a meeting with the sacristan. Monastic life, where even the rodents seem to have a purpose. You're back in bed by 4 a.m., stealing a few more hours of sleep. The straw pokes through the thin cloth, and you shift, searching for a spot that doesn't feel like a penance. You chose this life. No one dragged you here kicking and screaming. You could have been a farmer, wrestling pigs in the mud, or a peddler dodging bandits on the road. Instead, you're here, where the biggest scandal is Brother Anselm forgetting to clean the inkpots or sneaking an extra slice of cheese. As you drift off, you wonder if the mouse made it to its meeting, or if it's still scurrying through the chapel, chasing its own quiet rebellion. The bell rings again at dawn. Lauds, the prayer that greets the sun. You rise, rubbing sleep from your eyes, and catch a glimpse of the sky through a narrow window slit. It's painted in soft pinks and golds, like someone spilled a chalice of watered-down wine across the heavens. The monastery is waking now, a quiet symphony of footsteps, muffled coughs, and the creak of wooden benches. You splash your face with water from a stone basin, the cold biting your skin like a stern reminder to stay awake. You wince, wondering why nobody's invented a way to warm the water, but then comfort isn't the point here. In the chapel the chants are brighter, or perhaps it's the light streaming through the stained glass, casting patches of red and blue on the worn stone floor. You're no troubadour, your voice cracks on the high notes, and you're fairly sure you're slightly off key, but the rhythm of the psalms is soothing, like a river flowing over smooth stones. Brother Gregory, who's been here since some long-dead king sat on the throne, is nodding off again, his head bobbing like a buoy in a storm. You suppress a chuckle, because laughter in the chapel is frowned upon, though you suspect God might appreciate the humour. In a place where silence is a virtue, falling asleep during prayers is the closest thing to defiance. After Lauds, you head to the lavatorium to wash your hands. The abbot insists on cleanliness, quoting scripture about purity, but you're pretty sure he just enjoys watching everyone shiver under the icy water. Breakfast follows, and it's as lavish as you'd expect from a monastery. A chunk of coarse bread, gritty enough to remind you of your humility, a sliver of hard cheese if the stores are generous, and a mug of weak ale. The ale's safer than water. Rivers around here carry more surprises than a peddler's cart, and not the good kind. You chew slowly, the bread's texture catching in your teeth, and wonder what the nobles are eating. Roasted pheasant? Spiced wine? Things you'll never taste, and that's fine. Simplicity is the point, or so you tell yourself as you take another sip of ale that tastes faintly of regret. By 7 a.m, you're in the scriptorium, the monastery's intellectual heart. It's a room of slanted desks, inkwells, and the faint leathery scent of vellum, calfskin scraped and stretched until it's smoother than a noble's flattery. Today, you're copying Saint. Augustine's Confessions, a text so dense it feels like wrestling a theological ox. You dip your quill, careful not to drip ink, and begin. The Latin flows, or at least it tries to. Your handwriting's passable, neat enough to avoid a scolding from the scriptorium master, but you're no illuminator. Those monks, the lucky ones, get to paint golden vines, tiny saints, and the occasional dragon in the margins. You're just transcribing, line after line, your fingers cramping by the 10th page, your eyes squinting in the dim light. The scriptorium is silent, save for the scratch of quills, the occasional sigh, and the faint creak of a stool. Silence is the rule, but it's never absolute. There's always a rustle of parchment, a cough, or Brother Thomas muttering about a smudged letter like it's a personal affront. You glance at the window, where a bee buzzes against the glass, trapped and frantic. You know the feeling, though you'd never admit it. The monotony can weigh on you, but you push it aside. This work matters. These books will outlive you, maybe by 1,000 years. Some scholar in a far-off future, say the year 2025, might read your copy and think, decent work, or they'll curse your uneven lines and the ink blotch on page 47. Either way, you're part of something eternal, a chain of knowledge that stretches across centuries. Around noon, it's sexed, another prayer service. The Psalms again, always the Psalms. You wonder, in a fleeting moment of irreverence, if God ever tires of hearing the same verses day after day. Probably not. He's got eternity to kill. Back in the scriptorium, you notice Brother Anselm's desk is empty. Word has it he's in the infirmary, felled by a stomachache from sneaking extra cheese at breakfast. Monks aren't supposed to indulge, but cheese is the monastery's forbidden fruit, a temptation even the holiest can't always resist. You smirk, then refocus, dipping your quill. The bee's still at the window, buzzing with less enthusiasm now, as if it's resigned to its fate. You hope it finds its way out, but you're not optimistic. After sext, you're sent to the herb garden, where the monastery grows its food and medicine. Self-sufficiency is the rule. Nobody's running to the nearest village for a bundle of sage or a sack of leeks. You're weeding today, tugging stubborn dandelions from the soil while bees hum around you, oblivious to their trapped cousin in the scriptorium. The garden's a peaceful place, with neat rows of lavender, thyme, and something called wormwood that sounds like it belongs in a bard's tale or a witch's brew. You're no herbalist, but you know enough to avoid nibbling the wrong leaves. Last year, Brother William decided to taste the garden and spent a week in the infirmary, pale as a ghost, and swearing he'd seen visions of Saint Benedict himself. You're not sure if it was the wormwood or his own guilt, but you're not taking chances. The sun's high now, warming your back through your habit, and for a moment you feel content. The world's troubles, wars, plagues, tax collectors, can't touch you here. This is why you stay. These quiet moments when God feels close, and the world feels small, manageable, like a well-tended row of herbs. Then a goat wanders in, munching the mint with a glee that feels almost sinful, and you spend the next half hour herding it back to the pasture. You're no shepherd, and the goat knows it, eyeing you with a smugness that's distinctly unmonastic. You sigh, brushing dirt from your hands, and head to dinner. The midday meal, served at 2 p.m, is the day's main event, though event might be generous. It's vegetable stew, thick with barley, carrots, and the occasional turnip, another hunk of gritty bread, and a tart apple that makes your lips pucker like you've bitten into a lemon. The refectory is quiet, save for the reader, a monk reciting Ecclesiastes while you eat. All is vanity, he intones, his voice a steady drone, and you glance at Brother Gregory, who's sneaking an extra spoonful of a stew when he thinks the abbot isn't looking. Vanity indeed. You chew slowly, savouring the warmth, and wonder about the goat. Did it tell its friends about the mint, or is it grazing alone, plotting its next raid? After dinner, you're assigned to the brewery, where the monastery makes its ale. It's not a tavern, no one's toasting or singing bawdy songs. But ale's a staple, safer than water, and easier to store than milk. You stir a vat of barley mash, the steam rising like a dragon's breath, and check the fermentation. The recipe's ancient, older than the stone walls around you, passed down through generations of monks who probably also grumbled about the smell. You're good at this, though. There's a rhythm to it, a kind of alchemy that feels almost holy, transforming grain and water into something that sustains the community. You're not drinking for pleasure, monks don't do that, but you appreciate the craft, the way each batch carries a hint of the past. By 4 p.m, it's none, another prayer service. The chapel's warm now, the afternoon sun slanting through the windows, painting the floor in soft colours like a painter who forgot to finish the canvas. You're tired, your hands sticky with malt, and the psalms blend into a familiar drone. You catch yourself wondering about the goat again. Did it find its way back to the pasture, or is it still scheming? Focus, you tell yourself. God's listening, or at least the abbot is, and he's got a sharp eye for daydreamers. You stand straighter, mouthing the words, though your mind's half in the brewery, half in the pasture. The rest of the afternoon is yours, or as yours as it gets in a monastery. You walk the cloister, a square courtyard framed by stone arches, and let your mind wander. Before you took your vows, you were a farmer's son, destined for a life of ploughing fields and praying for rain that never came. Here at least the work feels eternal. Books, ale, herbs, all part of something bigger than a single harvest. Still, you miss your mother's bread, warm and soft, not this gritty loaf that feels like a test of endurance. You shake off the thought. Nostalgia's a luxury monks can't afford, like spices or a bed that doesn't creak. As evening falls, it's time for vespers. The chapel's lit by candles now, their flames flickering like tiny beacons in the gathering dark. The chants are slower, more reflective, and you feel the day's weight settling into your bones. You're young, maybe 25, but monastic life ages you in odd ways. Your knees ache from kneeling, your fingers are stained with ink and malt, and you're pretty sure you've forgotten how to laugh without sounding like a startled goose. The psalms wrap around you like a blanket, their rhythm steady and sure, and for a moment you feel at peace. Supper's light, more bread, a handful of dried figs, and a cup of water that tastes faintly of the stone well it came from. The refectory's quieter now, the reader droning on about Job's trials. You sympathise with Job, but at least he didn't have to listen to Brother Thomas's snoring, which you're certain could wake the dead. You finish eating and head to the chapter house for the daily meeting. The abbot reads from the rule of St. Benedict, urging humility, obedience, and silence. You nod, but your mind's on the goat. You hope it's safe, munching grass somewhere peaceful, not plotting another mint heist. The final prayer, Compline, comes at dusk. The chapel's dark, save for a few candles, their light pooling like liquid gold. The chants feel like a lullaby, wrapping you in calm, and you sing of rest, of God's protection through the night. For a moment, you believe it completely. The world outside, kings, wars, famine, feels distant, irrelevant. Here it's just you, your brothers, and the rhythm of this life, steady as a heartbeat. After Compline, the great silence begins. No speaking until morning. You shuffle to the dormitory, your footsteps echoing in the quiet, and settle onto your straw mattress. The ceiling's familiar now. Its cracks like a map of your thoughts. You think about the day. Prayers, quills, goats, ale. It's ordinary, repetitive, but there's a beauty in it, a purpose that carries you. You're part of something that will outlast you, something that's been here for centuries and will be here long after you're gone. As you drift into sleep, let's linger on the monastery's rhythm, because that's what holds this life together. Days here aren't marked by grand events. No battles won, no treasures unearthed. Instead, it's the small things, the weight of a quill in your hand, the smell of barley in the brewery, the soft clatter of plates in the refectory. You've learned to find meaning in repetition, in the way each prayer, each task, builds something larger than yourself. You think of your brothers, the monks who share this life. There's Brother Gregory, who's been here so long he claims to remember when the chapel's roof didn't leak. A bold claim, since it's leaked for decades. There's Brother Anselm, recovering from his cheese-induced penance, probably dreaming of softer beds and milder flavours. And Brother Thomas, whose muttering in the scriptorium is as reliable as the bell, a constant undercurrent of complaints about ink and parchment. They're not perfect, nobody is, but they're your family, bound by vows and shared silences, by the rhythm of this strange, quiet life. You dream of the garden, of the goat that wandered in, and wonder if it's still out there, grazing under the stars. You dream of the books you've copied, their pages travelling to distant lands, read by people you'll never meet. You dream of the ale, bubbling in its vats, and the psalms, rising like smoke to the heavens. It's a simple dream, but it's yours, and it's enough. In your sleep, your mind drifts to the world beyond the walls. The monastery isn't an island, not really. It's tied to the land, to the villagers who bring grain and wool in exchange for prayers, to the lords who donate land in hopes of buying a spot in heaven. You've heard stories of the outside, tales of wars, of kings crowned and deposed, of plagues that sweep through towns like divine judgment. Here those stories feel like whispers, half heard and easily ignored, like the wind rattling the chapel windows. But the monastery has its role. The books you copy will teach priests and scholars, preserving knowledge through a world that seems determined to forget. The ale you brew will feed the poor who come to the gate, their faces lined with hunger and hope. The herbs you grow will heal the sick, or at least ease their pain, offering a small mercy in a world that's often merciless. You're not changing the world, not in the way a king or a knight might, but you're holding it together. One quill stroke, one prayer, one weed pulled at a time. You think of the pilgrims who visit, weary travellers seeking blessings or miracles. You've seen them in the chapel, kneeling on the cold stone, their eyes bright with hope or clouded with despair. You don't have answers for them, nobody does, but you offer what you can, a bowl of stew, a prayer, a moment of peace. It's not much, but it's enough to keep them going, to send them back into the world a little lighter. As the night deepens, your sleep grows heavier, and the monastery fades into a soft blur. You're no longer just a monk in 1086, you're part of a chain, a tradition that stretches back to Benedict and forward to a future you can't imagine. The bells will ring tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. The psalms will be sung, the books copied, the herbs tended. The goat might wander again, and Brother Gregory will probably doze off mid-prayer, his snores blending with the chants. This is the monastery's gift, the eternal now. Each day mirrors the last, yet each is new. You're not chasing glory or wealth, you're chasing something quieter, something that feels like truth. You don't always understand it, but you feel it in the rhythm of the hours, in the weight of the quill, in the warmth of the sun on your back. It's a life of small moments, woven together into something vast, something that endures. In the stillness of the night, as you lie on your straw mattress, you reflect on what this life means. It's not about fame or fortune. Those are for knights and merchants, for people who measure their days in coin or conquest. Here, success is quieter. A page copied without error, a row of herbs free of weeds, a prayer sung without faltering. You've learned to find joy in these things, to see the divine in the mundane. The world outside might chase fleeting pleasures, but you found something steadier, something that anchors you. You think of the other monks, each with their quirks and quiet struggles. There's Brother William, who still tells the story of his wormwood misadventure, embellishing it with each retelling until it sounds like he wrestled a demon. There's Brother Stephen, the novice who's still learning the Psalms and blushes every time he stumbles over a Latin phrase. And there's the abbot, stern but kind, who watches over you all like a shepherd with a particularly stubborn flock. They're your brothers, your companions in this strange, silent life, and you wouldn't trade them, not even for a softer bed. As you drift deeper into sleep, you imagine the monastery's future. These walls will stand long after you're gone, sheltering generations of monks who will sing the same psalms, copy the same books, tend the same herbs. The world will change, kings will fall, empires will rise, and maybe someone will finally invent socks, but the monastery will endure, a quiet constant in a chaotic world. Your work, your prayers, your small acts of devotion will ripple forward, touching lives you'll never know. You think of the books in the scriptorium, their pages filled with your careful script. They'll travel to other monasteries, to cathedrals, to scholars who will pore over them by candlelight. They'll carry your mistakes too, the ink blotch on page 47, the slightly crooked line on page 82, but that's part of it. Perfection isn't the goal. Faithfulness is. You've done your part, and that's enough. And so, you've lived a day in a medieval monastery, a world of bells and books, of silence and small triumphs. It's not a life for everyone. Most would balk at the endless prayers, the gritty bread, the lack of anything resembling excitement. But for you, in this moment, it's home. Sleep well, listener. Let the monastery's rhythm carry you. Let the bells sing you to rest. Maybe you'll dream of goats and quills, of ale and psalms, or maybe you'll just drift, held by the quiet beauty of a life long past.